sun barely peeked over the horizon on March 31, 2025, casting a golden glow across the sleepy streets of Washington, D.C. Inside the Department of Justice, however, there was no calm before the storm, only the storm itself. Attorney General Pam Bondi sat at her polished oak desk, her sharp eyes scanning a stack of legal briefs. Her fiery red hair was pulled back tight, a symbol of the no-nonsense resolve she'd brought to the job since President Donald Trump swore her in just weeks earlier. The air buzzed with tension and the faint hum of Fox News played on a TV in the corner, recapping the latest clash between the Trump administration and the judiciary. It all started 3 days ago when U.S. District Judge James Boasberg issued an order that sent shockwaves through the nation. Boasberg, an Obama appointee with a reputation for measured rulings, had crossed a line, or so Bondi believed. The judge had halted a deportation flight carrying members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, a group the Trump administration had labeled a foreign terrorist organization under the Alien Enemies Act. The plane was already airborne, soaring over international waters when Boasberg demanded it turn back to U.S. soil. His reasoning? He wanted answers about the operation, details the administration deemed classified, vital to national security. Bondi slammed her pen down, the sound echoing in the quiet office. "This isn't justice," she muttered to her deputy, Todd Blanche, a wiry man with a loyal streak a mile wide. "This is a power grab. Boasberg thinks he can play dictator from his cushy courtroom while we're out here keeping America safe." Blanche nodded, flipping through a dossier on the judge. "He's got a history, Pam. Ruled against us on the Pence testimony back in 23. He's no friend of the administration." "Friend or not, he's overstepped," Bondi snapped. She stood, pacing the room like a lioness ready to pounce. Trump promised the American people he'd drain the swamp, and that includes activist judges who think they run the show. Boasberg's order didn't just ground a plane, it grounded our entire agenda. The TV flickered to a clip of Trump at a rally in Ohio the night before, his voice booming through the speakers. "Judge Boasberg, a radical left lunatic, is protecting terrorists over hardworking Americans. We're gonna fight back, folks, believe me." The crowd roared, waving red MAGA hats like battle flags. Bondi smirked. The boss was fired up, and that meant she had her marching orders. She turned to Blanche. "Get me everything we've got on Boasberg's ruling. I want to know how he justified this, who's backing him, and what strings he's pulling. We're not just appealing this, we're hitting back hard." By noon, the DOJ war room was alive with activity. Aides scurried about, phones rang off the hook, and legal minds dissected Boasberg's order line by line. Bondi stood at the head of the table, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This isn't about one flight. It's about who controls this country, the people's elected leaders or unelected robes. Boasberg's trying to humiliate us, and I'll be damned if we let him." As the day wore on, a radical idea took shape. Bondi leaned over to Blanche, her voice low. "What if we don't just appeal? What if we charge him? Obstruction of justice, abuse of power. Something to show the American people we won't roll over." Blanche's eyes widened, but a grin crept across his face. "You're talking about a legal nuke, Pam. You sure?" "Damn right I'm sure," she said. "Let's light the fuse." The clock struck 8 p.m. on March 31, 2025, and the Department of Justice was a hive of controlled chaos. Pam Bondi's office had transformed into a command center with maps of judicial districts pinned to the walls and stacks of legal precedent towering on every surface. The faint scent of coffee hung in the air, fueling the team as they worked into the night. Bondi stood at the whiteboard, scribbling notes in red marker: obstruction, contempt, national security breach. Her plan to charge Judge James Boasberg was no longer a whisper, it was a full-blown strategy, and she was all in. Todd Blanche sat hunched over his laptop, digging through Boasberg's past rulings. "Found something," he called out, his voice cutting through the hum of printers and ringing phones. Back in 2021, he blocked a Trump-era pipeline project, citing environmental concerns. Environmentalists loved him, but conservatives called it judicial overreach. Sound familiar? Bondi spun around, her eyes narrowing. Pattern of behavior. Perfect. If we can prove he's got a history of sticking his nose where it doesn't belong, this isn't just about the deportation flight, it's about a rogue judge undermining democracy. Across town, Judge Boasberg wasn't sitting idly by. In his chambers at the E. Barrett Prettyman Courthouse, he sipped a glass of bourbon, his tie loosened after a long day. His clerk, a young Ivy League grad named Emily Carter, paced nervously. Sir, they're saying on X that Bondi's coming after you hard. Something about criminal charges. This isn't just an appeal. Boasberg chuckled, though there was a steely edge to it. Let her try. I've been on the bench 14 years and I've seen worse than Pam Bondi's temper tantrums. She's got no jurisdiction to charge me. Judicial immunity's ironclad. Emily frowned, scrolling through her phone. Maybe, but the MAGA crowd's eating it up. Hashtags like hashtag lock Boasberg up are trending. They're calling you a traitor. He waved a hand dismissively. Noise. The law's on my side. That flight was a black box operation, no warrants, no oversight. I had every right to demand transparency. Back at the DOJ, Bondi's team was building their case. They'd uncovered a classified memo detailing the Tren de Aragua operation, names, dates, and a direct link to a string of violent crimes in Texas border towns. Bondi held the memo up like a trophy. This is why we grounded that plane. These animals were headed back to Caracas to regroup, and Boasberg gave them a lifeline. He didn't just overstep, he endangered lives. Blanche hesitated, tapping his pen against the table. Pam, we can argue that in court, but criminal charges? That's a stretch. Judges don't get prosecuted for rulings, even bad ones. Bondi's jaw tightened. This isn't a ruling, it's sabotage. He knew that flight was in the air, knew it was classified, and still stuck his gavel where it didn't belong. We'll call it obstruction of a federal operation under 18 U.S.C. 1505. Let him explain that to a grand jury. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Charging a sitting federal judge wasn't just bold, it was a declaration of war. But Bondi wasn't backing down. She dialed Trump's private line, her voice steady as she briefed him. Mr. President, we've got a shot to take Boasberg down. It's risky, but it sends a message: no one's above the law, not even the bench. Trump's voice crackled through the speaker. Pam, you're a fighter, love it. Do it fast, do it big. The people are with us. Boasberg's finished. As Bondi hung up, the TV blared a new headline: Trump vows justice after judge grounds terrorist flight. The battle lines were drawn and D.C. was about to erupt. By the morning of April 1, 2025, Washington, D.C. was a powder keg ready to blow. Word had leaked overnight. Attorney General Pam Bondi was preparing to file criminal charges against U.S. District Judge James Boasberg. The news hit like a thunderclap, dominating every cable channel, X-thread, and diner conversation from coast to coast. Outside the DOJ, a crowd of Trump supporters waved signs reading, "Judges don't rule us," and "Bondi 2028. While counter-protesters chanted, "Defend the judiciary." Riot police lined the streets, their shields glinting in the spring sun. Inside her office, Bondi ignored the chaos, her focus razor-sharp. She stood before a podium flanked by her legal team as cameras flashed. Yesterday, Judge James Boasberg obstructed a critical national security operation, she declared, her voice steady and commanding. He didn't just overrule a policy, he endangered American lives by halting the deportation of known terrorists. Today, I'm announcing that the Department of Justice will seek an indictment for obstruction of justice and abuse of judicial authority. No one, not even a federal judge, is above the law. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions: is this political revenge? What precedent supports this? But Bondi waved them off, stepping away as her deputy, Todd Blanche, took over with the legalese. She'd lit the match, now the fire would spread. Across town, Judge Boasberg watched the press conference from his chambers, his face a mask of calm fury. She's bluffing, he said to his clerk, Emily Carter, who clutched a stack of case law like a lifeline. No AG has ever indicted a sitting judge for a ruling. This is theater, Trump's circus. Emily bit her lip, her eyes darting to her phone. Maybe, sir, but X is exploding. They've dug up every ruling you've ever made, calling you a deep state puppet. And CNN says the White House is pushing this hard. They've got clips of Trump calling you a national disgrace at a rally last night. Boasberg leaned back, swirling the last of his bourbon from the night before. Let them scream. The law's clear, judicial immunity protects me. Bondi's got no case, just noise. But the noise was deafening. By noon, the House Judiciary Committee announced an emergency hearing titled Judicial Overreach, the Boasberg Crisis. Talking heads on Fox News cheered Bondi's guts, while MSNBC decried a constitutional meltdown. On X, #BoasbergGate trended with millions of posts, from memes of Bondi as a superhero to conspiracy threads claiming Boasberg was a Venezuelan operative. The story had spiraled beyond anyone's control. At the White House, President Trump paced the Oval Office, grinning like a kid on Christmas. Pam's a genius, he told his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, who'd returned for a second tour. She's got Boasberg on the ropes, and the people love it. Ratings are through the roof, better than The Apprentice. Meadows nodded cautiously. Sir, it's bold, but the Senate's nervous. McConnell's already muttering about separation of powers. If this flops, it could backfire. Backfire? Trump laughed. Mitch'll fall in line when he sees the crowds. We're winning, Mark Bigley. Back at the DOJ, Bondi's team finalized the indictment draft. The charges were illegal longshot obstruction under 18 U.S.C. 1505 plus a novel count of reckless endangerment of national security, but Bondi didn't care about the odds. This isn't just about winning in court, she told Blanche. It's about showing the swamp we fight back. As the sun set, the indictment papers sat ready, a ticking bomb about to drop. D.C. braced for impact. The morning of April 2, 2025, dawned gray and tense over Washington, D.C. By 9 a.m., Attorney General Pam Bondi's indictment against Judge James Boasberg was filed in federal court, a 47-page document dripping with accusations of obstruction, abuse of power, and endangering national security. The move stunned legal scholars, electrified Trump's base, and sent the Capitol into a tailspin. Outside the courthouse, protesters clashed, red hats hurling insults at black-robed defenders of judicial independence. Sirens wailed as police struggled to keep the peace. Inside the DOJ, Bondi stood tall, her team buzzing around her like soldiers in a war room. We've got him dead to rights, she said, slapping the indictment onto the table. Boasberg's order wasn't just reckless, it was a deliberate attack on this administration's authority. The grand jury's convening tomorrow. Let's see him wiggle out of this. Todd Blanche, ever the pragmatist, scratched his head. Pam, the legal eagles are losing their minds. CNN's got a panel saying this'll get tossed faster than a hot potato, judicial immunity's a brick wall. Bondi's eyes flashed. Let them squawk. This isn't about a slam dunk conviction, it's about accountability. The American people deserve to see a judge face the music for once. Across the city, Judge Boasberg wasn't waiting for the music to start. He called an emergency press conference at the courthouse steps, his black robe billowing in the wind. Flanked by a dozen fellow judges, he stared down the cameras. This indictment is an assault on the judiciary itself, he said, his voice steady but laced with indignation. For 2 centuries, judges have ruled without fear of retribution from the executive branch. Pam Bondi and Donald Trump want to shred that tradition to score political points. I won't bend and I won't break. The crowd roared, some in support, others in fury. A protester lobbed a soda can, narrowly missing Boasberg's head, and security whisked him back inside. His clerk, Emily Carter, followed, her face pale. Sir, this is getting ugly. The Chief Justice just called, he's deeply concerned. What if they actually arrest you? Boasberg smirked. They won't dare. Bondi's playing chicken and I'm not blinking. But Bondi wasn't bluffing. By afternoon, the White House doubled down, with Trump tweeting from @Real Donald Trump, Judge Boasberg, a disgrace, protected terrorists over you, the American people. AG Bondi's fighting for justice. #MAGA, the post racked up millions of likes, fueling the fire. Fox News ran a cheerin', Trump versus. The bench, the showdown begins. April 3, 2025, broke over Washington, D.C., like a fever dream. The grand jury convened at 8 a.m., a secretive panel tucked away in the federal courthouse, tasked with deciding whether Judge James Boasberg would face trial for Attorney General Pam Bondi's audacious charges. Outside, the city was a circus. Protesters clashed with batons and tear gas. News helicopters buzzed overhead, and ex-posts flew at 1,000,000 a minute. The nation held its breath, split between those who saw Bondi as a hero and those who branded her a tyrant. Inside the DOJ, Bondi paced her office, a lioness waiting for the kill. The indictment had been her brainchild, a legal Molotov cocktail lobbed at the judiciary, and now it was in the grand jury's hands. They've got the evidence, she told Todd Blanche, her voice taut with conviction. The classified memo, the flight logs, the body count from Trenda Aragua's crimes. Boasberg's not walking away from this. Blanche nodded, though doubt flickered in his eyes. Pam, if they no-bill this, we're toast. The media's already spinning it as a power grab. We could lose the Senate over this. Bondi smirked. Let him spin. The people get it, Trump gets it. That's what matters. At the White House, President Trump watched the drama unfold on a bank of TVs, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Pam's a killer, he told Mark Meadows, who hovered nearby with a stack of briefing papers. She's showing these judges who's boss. The ratings? Unbelievable. Meadows forced a smile, but his mind was on the Supreme Court, which had gone eerily silent. If they stepped in, this could all collapse. Across town, Judge Boasberg sat in his chambers, reviewing case law with Emily Carter. "They've got no shot," he said, his tone calm but edged with steel. "The grand jury'll see through this charade. Judges don't get indicted for rulings. It's absurd." Emily wasn't so sure. "Sir, Bondi's team's been hammering the national security angle. If they sway even half the jury," Boasberg cut her off. "They won't. The law's on my side." But the law wasn't the only force at play. By noon, rumors swirled that Bondi's prosecutors had leaned hard on the grand jurors, painting Boasberg as a bleeding-heart elitist who'd coddled terrorists. At 3 p.m., the verdict dropped. A true bill. Boasberg was indicted on 2 counts, obstruction and reckless endangerment. The courthouse erupted, cheers and screams echoing through the halls. Bondi took the podium within the hour, triumphant. "Today, justice prevailed," she declared. "No one, not even a judge, can jeopardize American lives and walk away. This is a win for the people." The MAGA crowd roared online and in the streets, hailing her as a warrior. Trump tweeted, "Big win. Pam Bondi just made history. Boasberg's done." April 3rd, 2025, broke over Washington, D.C., like a fever dream. The grand jury convened at 8 a.m., a secretive panel tucked away in the federal courthouse, tasked with deciding whether Judge James Boasberg would face trial for Attorney General Pam Bondi's audacious charges. Outside, the city was a circus. Protesters clashed with batons and tear gas, news helicopters buzzed overhead, and ex-posts flew at 1,000,000 a minute. The nation held its breath, split between those who saw Bondi as a hero and those who branded her a tyrant. Inside the DOJ, Bondi paced her office, a lioness waiting for the kill. The indictment had been her brainchild, a legal Molotov cocktail lobbed at the judiciary, and now it was in the grand jury's hands. "They've got the evidence," she told Todd Blanche, her voice taut with conviction. "The classified memo, the flight logs, the body count from Trenda Aragua's crimes. Boasberg's not walking away from this." Blanche nodded, though doubt flickered in his eyes. "Pam, if they no-bill this, we're toast. The media's already spinning it as a power grab. We could lose the Senate over this." Bondi smirked. "Let him spin. The people get it, Trump gets it. That's what matters." At the White House, President Trump watched the drama unfold on a bank of TVs, grinning like a Cheshire cat. "Pam's a killer," he told Mark Meadows, who hovered nearby with a stack of briefing papers. "She's showing these judges who's boss." The ratings? Unbelievable. Meadows forced a smile, but his mind was on the Supreme Court, which had gone eerily silent. If they stepped in, this could all collapse. Across town, Judge Boasberg sat in his chambers, reviewing case law with Emily Carter. "They've got no shot," he said, his tone calm but edged with steel. "The grand jury'll see through this charade. Judges don't get indicted for rulings. It's absurd." Emily wasn't so sure. "Sir, Bondi's team's been hammering the national security angle. If they sway even half the jury," Boasberg cut her off. "They won't. The law's on my side." But the law wasn't the only force at play. By noon, rumors swirled that Bondi's prosecutors had leaned hard on the grand jurors, painting Boasberg as a bleeding-heart elitist who'd coddled terrorists. At 3 p.m., the verdict dropped. A true bill. Boasberg was indicted on 2 counts, obstruction and reckless endangerment. The courthouse erupted, cheers and screams echoing through the halls. Bondi took the podium within the hour, triumphant. "Today, justice prevailed," she declared. "No one, not even a judge, can jeopardize American lives and walk away. This is a win for the people." The MAGA crowd roared online and in the streets, hailing her as a warrior. Trump tweeted, "Big win. Pam Bondi just made history. Boasberg's done." Boasberg, meanwhile, vowed to fight. "This is a travesty," he told reporters, his face pale but resolute. "I'll see this through to the Supreme Court if I have to." Legal experts predicted a brutal battle ahead. Immunity would likely shield him, but the damage was done. His name was mud to half the country. As night fell, D.C. simmered. The indictment didn't settle the war, it ignited a new one. Trump's base saw victory, his foes saw tyranny. Bondi had rolled the dice and won the round, but the game was far from over. In America's heartland, diners and barrooms buzzed with one question: who really runs this country? The answer, for now, hung in the air, raw, divided, and fiercely alive.